people would ask me, well, why do I care who's on the board? And, well, I care because kids won't say it and won't admit, but they look up to teachers and they look up to everybody on the board. And, you know, if there's somebody that's saying hateful messages and hateful things, and they shouldn't be on there, because everybody looks at you guys as an example, and this is a place of no hate. So why is there somebody who's saying hateful things and is still here? So that's just my opinion.
That was my brave daughter that just came up here and spoke. And she did that because she can't believe that the students in her school are held to a higher standard than the people who are running the school in the school district. Nor can I. And the employees of the school district all have to take a video course on how to behave on social media. And if they violate any of the terms of that course, they are either disciplined or dismissed. But it would seem, with the activities of the board, that that same standard is not being held by you. You're coloring yourselves badly by refusing to act. I understand that you cannot force Mr. McDonough to leave, and he has not shown the wisdom to resign. However, there's been no statement whatsoever from the board. Mr. Doherty said 2 weeks ago when we were in the meeting here that we were going to see action when we came back on the 19th. I really haven't seen any action. I certainly haven't seen any action that acknowledges in any way there's been hate speech by a member of this board, and the board is responding to it. And that's outrageous. Now, there's 4 members of this board that are coming up for election next year. Everybody in this board eventually is elected. And I think you all do a good job. I said that the last time I stood here. But in this case, you're not doing a good job. And regardless of how terrific the rest of the district is run, this particular situation needs to be addressed before it gets worse. It's not going away. People aren't going to forget. It's not going to blow over. And it will continue to escalate. And you're continuing to enrage further and further people in this community. And I just think that the board's lack of action is reprehensible.
This is the hard part for me. I am 59 years old and a newly retired educator, and I'm going to speak to the whole group. As a gay educator, I have not said that in 59 years. I lived in fear that I would lose the job I loved working with young people. As a gay, closeted school principal, I lived in fear. I was criticized when I suspended or consequenced students who made homophobic comments, as much as I consequenced those who made racist comments. And I was in a very diverse district. They would come up to me and say, "Don't you think you overreacted a little bit there when that kid called the other kid a fag?" And I would say, well, what if he called him something racist? I would have had my job taken away from me if I didn't consequence. I do want to know, I want to know what is going to be done. We've talked about what hasn't been done. But let's be more positive and proactive here. As a school leader, how do our leaders enforce a bullying code when it might be compromised? I imagine in the millions of times as a vice principal and a principal that I had to consequence this. I could imagine the families that would say to me, "What are you going to do, suspend my child? Whoa, 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 whoa. You have a board member who had no consequence, and you're going to suspend my child for calling a kid a fag? What?" So I worry that it's going to take down the good order.
We're well past 3 minutes.
Really?
Yes, I know the rules seem arcane, but I wanted to accommodate you there. It's a 3-minute rule. I appreciate it.
You have somebody objecting to, a parent objecting to a child being disciplined for saying something akin to or doing something along the lines of what Mr. McDonough did. And that parent wants to not have that child suspended. I suggest that you might plan on on significant legal costs.
Board members, like anybody else, we all have public and private lives, okay? And if we start going down the path of looking at everything that someone says public or privately, then where does that take us? Okay?
The policy defines bullying as an intentional, electronic, written, verbal, or physical, social, or emotional act or series of acts, and includes cyberbullying. Violations of the policy by students can lead to expulsion, and by employees it can lead to dismissal. Enforcement of this policy will be impaired by the continued presence of Mr. McDonough on this board, I believe. And I believe also that the continued inaction by this board can call into question any future enforcement actions by the board. Some members apparently believe that because the statements in question were made by Mr. McDonough in his private Facebook posting, they are not something that the board could or should do anything about. I respectfully disagree. Both the state law and the board's policies clearly state that such private statements are indeed covered by a variety of policies. Indeed, devising a bullying policy which includes cyberbullying, but which would not cover private postings on private social media accounts would be absurd on its face.
I've heard the word hateful speech tonight, also last time. But when I look at Mr. McDonough's Facebook posting, I have several questions. Does he in any way denigrate or even mention a specific religion? No. Does he denigrate or even mention a specific race of people? No. Does he denigrate or even mention a specific gender of people? No. Does he denigrate or even mention a person's economic status? No. Does he denigrate or even mention a person's physical or mental, psychological attributes or disabilities? No. Does he mention any person by name? Okay? And on that basis, because people have asked him to resign, he should not resign.
My fear is that while Mr. McDonough remains, we then set that precedent that while children make mistakes on Facebook, they make mistakes on Instagram and other places as well, they get consequences for those mistakes. And what they're seeing here, much to what Dennis alluded to, is that we're not taking any consequence here for the action of an adult in the circumstance. So what is the board going to do about that?
When you have someone in the board breaking that trust, this makes us, as a resident, question, second guess. And what happens is that once you break the social trust, one person, and it's gonna open the door, giving blank check to others to follow up. That's why in social structure, we need to have severe consequences who does hate crime or gives hate speech or any way will cause a distrust from the public. If you don't do that, your board will be tainted and your school will be tainted. And that's the action you need to take.
We don't have a policy on bullying for the board. There is no such thing. We set a policy for bullying when it's one student on a student or a staff member on a student or a staff member on a staff. Not a board member on a board member, not a board member on a staff, etc. So we set policies that run the schools dealing with staff and students, not board members.
The Board of School Directors of the New Hope-Solebury School District does not condone the statements made by Mr. McDonough on Facebook approximately 2 weeks ago. Those statements did not and do not reflect our perspective. The board reaffirms to the entire community, most importantly its students, that the district is a safe, secure, and inclusive learning environment. Moving forward, we will use this incident as an opportunity to review our policies and determine how we can reinforce our commitment to providing that safe, secure, and inclusive learning environment for all students. Thank you.
What my comments did to me was open my eyes to a deep rift in this community that I was unaware of. And the fact that students in this school were fearful or felt excluded, we would be reviewing our policies and bolstering them up so that any sort of decline in the severity of the policies or whatever was felt over the years could be addressed. We could also implement the kind of programs that we're talking about, No Place for Hate. I've seen programs from government-backed programs that are huge through the Defamation League program that we're talking about. There are smaller, private-funded programs to address inclusivity and bringing people into the school district, making them feel safe. There's even just motivational speaker guys like Tony Robbins type thing, but that would address the issues that we're talking about. And I could also envision appointing a coordinator for non-discrimination, someone to come to report any incidences of discrimination, bigotry, bias, anti-LGBT talk, whatever that might be, a focal point to address all these issues so that we could be more aware of them. I don't plan on running away from this. I want to address these issues and bring about a change that could actually be beneficial to all the members of our community.
In the past 2 weeks, Dr. Yanni introduced us to the ADL's program, No Place for Hate. Very quickly, he produced a transgender policy that was already vetted by legal. Mrs. Dusing took up the burden of reviewing policy affecting directors. The action on the board and the administration was swift in response to this episode. And I know that folks want a more decisive statement and action, but the arcane rules that govern school board meetings are there for good reason, and we're going to abide by those policies.